Emma and Jake never imagined that the quiet man next door, Mr. Thompson, was secretly watching their every move. What started as small, unsettling signs soon escalated into a terrifying discovery that would shatter the entire neighborhood. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, everything seemed peaceful on the surface. Lawns were neatly trimmed, houses painted in soft pastels, and the hum of daily life created a comforting rhythm. Children rode bicycles along the sidewalks, dogs barked lazily in the afternoons, and neighbors exchanged polite greetings over fences. It was the kind of place where doors were left unlocked, where people felt safe stepping out in the evening without a second thought. But beneath this calm exterior, an unsettling presence lurked, invisible, yet disturbingly close. It started with small, almost imperceptible signs. Residents noticed objects slightly out of place, doors left ajar, and fleeting shadows that vanished when looked at directly. At first, it was easy to dismiss maybe a gust of wind, maybe a distracted family member. But then, whispers began to circulate about strange noises late at night, a faint rustling, a soft click, and at times the unmistakable creak of a floorboard in an empty house. People felt eyes on them when no one should have been there, a creeping sensation that someone was always just out of sight, observing. The tension escalated when a teenage girl visiting a friend stumbled across a hidden camera tucked discreetly inside a bathroom fixture. The realization hit her like a punch to the chest. Someone had been secretly recording her private moments. Panic set in, and her fear rippled outward, touching the lives of neighbors who had started to notice similar incidents. Each discovery deepened the sense of violation, and the community began to understand that these were not random occurrences, but a pattern of deliberate intrusion. As word spread, unease transformed into fear. Parents kept children indoors, doors were double locked, and security systems were installed in a hurry. No one felt truly safe anymore. The local police were called repeatedly, but without concrete evidence. The investigation moved slowly. Each report seemed to blend into the next, a mounting wave of anxiety, with no clear target. Yet, the residents' suspicions persisted, fueled by the uncanny feeling that their lives were being silently monitored. The neighborhood, once a haven of comfort and trust, now simmered with tension. Every creak of a door, every flicker of light, and every unknown sound became a potential warning. People began glancing over shoulders and peering out windows more often than they ever had. And in the shadows, unseen and unchallenged, the person responsible continued their hidden work, confident that no one could catch them. The threat was real, immediate, and invisible, and the community was left holding its breath, waiting for the moment when the darkness would finally reveal itself. Investigators soon discovered that the situation was far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. The hidden camera in the bathroom was not an isolated device, it was part of a calculated and elaborate network. Each camera had been carefully placed in locations designed to record victims without their knowledge. Some were disguised as everyday objects, almost impossible to notice. Smoke detectors, air vents, even small decorative items. The perpetrator had thought of everything, exploiting the trust and routines of the people around him. As the authorities examined the footage, a chilling pattern emerged. The recordings were not random. They followed specific schedules, capturing moments when residents were most vulnerable. Each file was meticulously labeled and stored on multiple drives, suggesting obsession and planning far beyond a casual act of voyeurism. The thought that someone had been watching intimate moments of so many people over such a long period sent waves of fear through the community. The invasion of privacy felt limitless, and the victims could hardly believe that this had been happening in their own homes, under their noses. The police faced a complex challenge. Tracking the cameras required both patience and technical skill. Each tiny lens had to be traced back to its source, while the suspect remained hidden, moving in plain sight. Every clue raised more questions than answers. Who was capable of such meticulous planning? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, would the authorities be able to stop him before he struck again? The neighborhood's quiet streets had become a labyrinth of suspicion. People locked windows during the day, peeked at every stranger, and double-checked rooms for hidden devices. Trust eroded quickly, replaced by a constant sense of unease. Even familiar faces started to seem suspicious, and the comfort of community life dissolved into paranoia. Amid this chaos, the investigators began to recognize the psychological profile of the offender: methodical, patient, and deeply secretive. There was no sign of impulsivity, only calculated actions meant to avoid detection. Each discovery revealed more about the sinister mind behind the crimes, but also highlighted the sheer audacity of someone willing to violate the lives of so many without remorse. The cameras were just the beginning, and the police realized that uncovering the full extent of the operation would require extreme diligence. The network of hidden devices had turned ordinary homes into traps, and every household became a potential victim. The community, gripped by fear and uncertainty, waited anxiously for the moment when law enforcement would finally identify the person responsible and end the silent terror that had invaded their lives. After weeks of painstaking investigation, the authorities finally began to narrow down a suspect. The evidence pointed toward a man who seemed, at first glance, perfectly ordinary. He lived in the same neighborhood, interacted politely with neighbors, and had maintained a low-profile lifestyle that raised no red flags. To those around him, he was quiet, reliable, and seemingly harmless, completely inconspicuous. The shocking realization that he could be behind the network of hidden cameras sent waves of disbelief through the community. Detectives worked tirelessly to piece together his activities. They analyzed hundreds of hours of surveillance footage, examined storage devices, and cross-referenced reports from residents who had noticed unusual behavior. Slowly, a profile emerged. He was organized, methodical, and highly secretive. Each camera he had placed, each device he had installed, demonstrated careful planning and a disturbing level of foresight. He had spent months, possibly years, observing patterns of daily life, waiting for moments when victims would be alone and unsuspecting. As the investigation deepened, the scale of his operation became terrifyingly clear. He hadn't just installed a few cameras. He had created an entire system. Multiple homes had been compromised, each recording meticulously cataloged, each file labeled with dates and times. The authorities discovered logs that tracked residents' routines, showing the level of surveillance he maintained. It was not a random act of curiosity, it was deliberate, premeditated, and chillingly invasive. The revelation shocked the neighborhood. Families who had once waved at him from across the street now looked at him with fear and suspicion. The man's outwardly normal behavior had been a mask, hiding a secret obsession that preyed on the lives of those around him. Authorities realized that they were dealing with someone who understood human behavior intimately, someone capable of blending in perfectly while carrying out heinous acts. Despite the mounting evidence, the suspect remained careful, leaving no fingerprints, no obvious traces, no mistakes that could immediately expose him. It became a tense waiting game, with law enforcement striving to catch him before he could act again. Every move he made was critical, and the investigators had to anticipate his next steps. The realization that someone so close, someone familiar, had violated the trust of the entire neighborhood added a personal, almost suffocating weight to the case. The quiet suburb, once a sanctuary, had become a landscape of fear. Every glance, every shadow, carried the memory of the hidden eyes watching. And as the police closed in, the community braced itself for the inevitable confrontation, hoping that the man who had operated in the shadows for so long would finally be brought to light. With the suspect finally identified, law enforcement knew they had to act carefully. They couldn't simply confront him. His meticulous nature meant he would likely disappear or destroy evidence if he suspected he was under investigation. Instead, the authorities devised a plan that required patience, precision, and secrecy. They set up a decoy scenario, a carefully controlled environment designed to lure him into exposing his actions once again. Every detail was orchestrated to minimize risk and maximize the chance of catching him in the act. The decoy apartment was equipped with hidden cameras and microphones, closely monitored by a team of officers. Every movement within the space was tracked, every shadow scrutinized. The investigators created the illusion of vulnerability, hoping the suspect would perceive it as an opportunity. Days turned into nights as the team waited, the tension building with each passing hour. The authorities were fully aware that the moment could come at any time, and they had to be ready to act immediately. Finally, the moment arrived. The man, unaware of the trap, entered the decoy apartment late one evening. His routine was methodical. He moved with caution, checking corners and inspecting the room as if confirming that no one was watching. The cameras captured every movement, documenting his behavior and revealing the same obsession that had terrorized the neighborhood for so long. Every action he took confirmed the investigators' suspicions, proving that he was indeed the source of the hidden camera network. Within minutes, the police moved in. The operation was executed flawlessly. Officers entered quietly but firmly, surrounding the suspect before he could react. Shock and disbelief crossed his face as the reality of capture sank in. Years of secrecy, careful planning, and hidden observation collapsed in an instant. The files, the cameras, and the detailed logs that had taken him months to organize were all now in the hands of authorities, serving as undeniable evidence of his crimes. The arrest was a dramatic turning point, marking the end of his reign of silent terror. For the neighborhood, it was both a relief and a moment of reckoning. Families began to understand the full scale of the invasion, the sheer number of victims, and the meticulousness with which he had operated. The operation had not only brought a dangerous individual to justice but had also exposed the fragility of the community's sense of safety. The shadow that had loomed over the neighborhood for so long was finally lifted. But the memory of the violation would linger, a reminder that evil could hide in plain sight. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community. Relief and lingering fear coexisted as residents grappled with the reality of what had been happening in their own homes. Families who had once felt safe behind locked doors now confronted the unsettling truth that a stranger had been watching their most private moments for months, perhaps years. The sense of violation was profound, and the healing process would be long and complicated. Authorities moved quickly to secure the evidence, cataloging hundreds of hours of recordings, files, and devices. Each item told a story of deliberate intrusion, revealing not only the methods used but also the sheer number of victims affected. Investigators worked tirelessly to identify everyone whose privacy had been violated, reaching out to residents with compassion while explaining the scope of the crimes. The man's detailed logs had tracked routines, habits, and vulnerabilities, confirming that these acts were planned with cold precision. The psychological impact on the victims was immense. Many struggled to process that someone they had seen around the neighborhood, someone they might have waved or exchanged small talk with, had secretly invaded their lives. Court proceedings became a public spectacle, though no one underestimated the gravity of the crimes. Evidence was presented methodically: the hidden cameras, the recordings, the logs meticulously documenting each invasion. The prosecution highlighted the suspect's calculated behavior, emphasizing the intentional and repeated violation of trust. The defense offered little in his favor, and the overwhelming weight of evidence ensured that justice would be served. When the verdict was announced, the community felt a mixture of relief and vindication, knowing that the perpetrator would no longer pose a threat. Despite the legal resolution, the neighborhood's scars remained. Parents spoke of being more vigilant, friends discussed the uneasy feeling that someone could hide in plain sight, and children were reminded to trust cautiously. Yet, slowly, life began to return to a semblance of normalcy. Residents reconnected, repaired trust, and fortified their homes against future intrusion. In the end, the man's capture served as both a warning and a lesson. Evil can hide behind the most ordinary appearances, and vigilance is essential. The neighborhood, though shaken, emerged stronger, bound by a shared experience of fear, revelation, and justice. While the memory of the crimes lingered, the community's resilience proved that even after betrayal and violation, people could reclaim their sense of safety, ensuring that the shadow of the past would not define the future.